on. And yeah, you're welcome to have your camera on, your camera off, whatever works for you. I'm hoping that you feel comfortable in the chat or speaking up. Either way, this is meant to be, short but relatively interactive. So this session is on understanding equity and assessment, which in the assessment space, you'll see equity is thought about similarly, but maybe a little bit different from what you think about when you hear that term. As we are beginning, we are celebrating our fall assessment day today. So I'm going to put a couple links into the chat. This is the link to our Gaucho Assessment Day site. So you can get all of our resources there. This recording and the slide deck will be posted by next week. So you can go and access it if you want later or recommend it to a friend. At some point after you are done with whatever you are doing for fall assessment day, it might be this session, it might be more. We ask that you fill out our participation form. You can get a little certificate if you want a little certificate, that's optional, it's up to you. But mostly we just want to capture the information, and we also want to see what things we might be able to do in the future to improve our programming in these spaces. I also would love it if you could just type your name into the chat for me, so that, because we're kind of sort of tracking attendance, so we get a good sense of who's here and so on. And as I'm running multiple things, that's the easiest way. So thank you very much. All right, so let's talk a little bit about understanding equity and assessment. I'm going to stop sharing for one moment because I need to check a setting before. Oh, there we go. It was not on. Let me come back. All right, so I just need to make sure my sound was on. So as we start, and sometimes this can be a hard question, but throw into the chat or unmute and mention, when you hear the word equity, what do you think of? And this could be one word, it could be a bunch of words, it could be a visual image. There's a bunch of images out there around things we think about with equity. What does that word make you think? Not necessarily in assessment space. Okay, fairness, all right. And you could throw more than one word in the chat too, if you'd like. Or like I said, unmute. Yes, the baseball field image, very, very popular. Yet not the same for everybody, right? Flexibility. Kind of fairness again. I do want to share, I almost put it into the slide deck, then I took it out. So this is a more popular version of that baseball field image. So I want to share it because it's something that I like, kind of, that just was actually coming up in the assessment institute I went into. So I'm just going to move it onto the screen here. So instead of sort of the baseball image, folks have really liked this one, where equality is this idea of everyone has the same bicycle, but not everybody wants or can use effectively the same bicycle. So equity, it gives everybody a bicycle that fits them. So this is a little bit, to me, a more powerful image than the baseball one. There's some other ones out there that kind of deal with this. There's one that I saw at Assessment Institute that had to do with like ladders, and it's like, okay, but this person is starting higher up on the ladder because of all of the things that have benefited them, and this person's in a hole, and how do we like strengthen certain ladders and all of that. Okay, so we probably have some sense of what equity means, but I want to talk about what it sort of means in the space of assessment, because this has been a very popular conversation in the assessment in the assessment community and so on. If you were around a few years ago, you might have seen this video that I made, and I'm going to play it briefly here. I think I can play it right through here. So let's see. It's like only 25 seconds. Oh, that's not going to work because I'm not on share. Hold on. Let me change it here. I like only sharing part of my screen because then I can see everybody more easily. So let's do this. Now let's try that again.
Yo, what's good? Nothing much. That
shirt's dripping, no cap. Damn straight it is. Where can I cop one? I can set you up. Snap me. Well, I'm out. All right. So I don't know how many of you, and hold on, let me shrink my screen back down as I'm showing you all sorts of weird things all over my screen. But I do like in Zoom being able to see kind of everything. How many of you have ever been in a situation either where you personally have had someone like a teenager talking a language you don't understand, or maybe you've been in a situation where a student doesn't understand what you're saying and it has nothing to do with your content? I see a few nodding heads. This happened to me most intensely when I was giving a test. It was about a dog. It was about, like, reinforcement and punishment. And it was a question from a test bank, although that's no excuse. And it said Labrador. And I had a student raise their hand. They're like, I don't know what a Labrador is. I'm like, oh, it's a dog. And I thought, why ever would this question say Labrador and not dog? And how many students in the years before maybe missed that question, not because they didn't understand the content, but they didn't know what a Labrador was, but never thought to ask because they didn't feel comfortable. So that's an equity and assessment issue, because if I don't understand your learning because I have set up the structure of my assessment in a way that disadvantages you, that has nothing to do with your content or my content or your content knowledge, that's a problem. So this came up when my kids were talking and I'm like, I don't know what does drippin' no cap mean? I mean, it means no lie, it's really good, but who knows that? If you have a fun story like that, throw in the chat, or maybe we could talk about it later, because I think that happens to us often. So what I want to do to kind of orient this conversation is I want to talk about our assessment strategic commitments. We have 3 of them: knowledge of assessment, equity in assessment, and action from assessment. And I'm going to focus, of course, on the equity ones here. So this is a lot of text on the screen, so bear with me. And I just copied this directly off of our Gaucho side. So for each of our strategic commitments, we have 2 goals we try to accomplish. And this is the first one for equity. And we want to engage in equity-minded practices. So this is probably what we typically think of when we think of equity. So we want to make sure we're addressing assumptions and biases, that we are looking at disaggregated data so that we are, mindful of our certain groups not doing as well, and what can we do to make sure, we've been talking about all this fairness. How do we elevate sort of everybody so that they're all on an equal footing, even if they come in at different levels? And so, so how do we support student success and student learning in a way that is equitable across our different groups? So the way that we do that here at GCC, we support through the CTLE, the Peralta Equity Rubric training. The CTLE is now proposing this TILT framework, and I'll talk about a little bit about both of those. And then we have, if you're not familiar with it, an institutional learning outcome data dashboard. Thank you, Jackie. So shout out to Jackie, who's done a lot of work on this, and I actually need to get her the spring data so she can work on it. I have an email sitting in my inbox that I've been ignoring for a while because I need to get her that data, because that is our best mechanism for looking at these issues college-wide. In terms of how we do this, this aligns with our GCC value of inclusiveness, and it also supports our HLC accreditation, specifically these 2 items here. But let me talk about these. There's certainly more metrics than these, but let me talk about these. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Peralta Equity Rubric. It was designed for online learning, but really it can help any faculty or really anybody designing materials for students. So this is a training the CTLE has put together. It is for FPG. So if you want salary advancement and you're eligible for it, it's a great tool. There are 2 trainings in the series. The first one, you learn about the Peralta Equity Rubric. And the second one, you apply it to your own class. But again, I think this could be applied in spaces even for some people who might be in student affairs or other areas. And so it has 8 different dimensions to it that you can see on the screen, where you're made to think about these issues like images and representation. Are you representing different types of people in the imagery in your course so that all students feel comfortable in that space? Are you providing technology that's supportive? Are you minimizing your own human bias? and so on. Are you, and so there's a whole framework to this that the course takes you through. So this is a way that assessment can say, all right, if you're looking for a student learning intervention that supports student learning outcomes, this is a great thing that does both of those. This year, the CTLE came out with the TILT framework. The TILT framework's been around for a long time. TILT stands for Transparency in Teaching and Learning, and it is an evidence-based practice that shows that if faculty use this TILT framework, which is a way of structuring our assignments, that there are lasting effects on students' success, even like years later, even when faculty maybe only tilt 2 assignments in their course. And the idea behind this TILT framework is that you do 3 things in your assignment design. You talk to students very clearly about the purpose. So why are they doing it? What skills are they going to learn from it? What content are they going to learn from it to kind of get some of that buy-in? You're going to go through the task in a very, very clear way. You need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And then you give criteria for success. You need to have a clear rubric. They need to know how they're going to be scored. And then part of the TILT framework is, if possible, you share with them an example assignment that's done well, that's maybe annotated with what's done well, and an example assignment that's been done poorly. And this is why you might not do this for every assignment in the class, but for key assignments that students struggle with, really giving them this information seems to have lasting effects on particularly first-gen students. So this is, again, a way that we're supporting student learning. We're supporting our persistence and completion goals, and we're trying to elevate all of our students. The last one in this section is our institutional learning outcomes. So part of our Focus 2024 strategic plan is that we get people involved in assessing these outcomes that we've identified as an institution are really important for our students. So it's things like communication, critical thinking, quantitative reasoning, information literacy. This is from the dashboard that I was talking about, and I can share the link later if you'd like as to how everyone can come take a look at it. So this is our quantitative reasoning and analysis institutional learning outcome. Right now, we have about 7,500 data points in this data set. And this is the breakdown by race or ethnicity. And you can see here, for example, that our Asian students are scoring higher, as are our white students, and our Black students, for example, are scoring lower. So this data is really interesting to look at because we know, for example, that our Black students are not completing or persisting at the same level as our white students, for example. And so what we're also seeing is not only are they not doing as well, but when their performance is being scored in terms of its learning, they're not scoring as well either. So it kind of provides this intersection of data where we can start thinking about things. And we need to think about them from 2 lenses. As an institution, we need to think about, well, what are the things we can do to make a change? But we can also think about, like, what are we doing in our individual classes? And so, one of the things I would say, wouldn't it be great if everybody did the Peralta Equity Rubric training, because maybe those shifts would shift this data here, or maybe doing some of the TILT work. So this is a way that we can think through how we provide our instruction, how we assess student learning can have a big effect. And that is that first goal that I talked about, which is really being more equity-minded, looking at data in disaggregated ways. All of you who are faculty also get the disaggregated success data in your classes as well through our institutional effectiveness team. So you can see how different groups potentially are doing in your classes. Any questions or comments before we go on to the next one? So this might not be surprising, right? Because this might be what we normally think about as equity. And thinking about some of these things. So the second one might be what's a little bit different that's happening in the assessment space. I mean, it's the idea of inclusion, but inclusion may be in a little different way. So our second goal is to really increase participation in assessment. And that's a very, very broad statement. We want more faculty involved gathering data, because we know that the more data we can capture, the more reliable it's likely to be. We're going to capture more groups. We're not going to miss people or underrepresent them in our data. And then, because the last thing we'd want to do is some learning improvement measure that doesn't capture some of our demographics. We want to make sure our staff are involved too, because obviously student learning is happening outside of the classroom. Had a really, really great session with Student Affairs earlier today, and they're doing incredible student learning work where they're doing interventions and they're seeing if it's going to help students. And like, we just haven't captured that formally in our assessment space, and I really want to. But the biggest one I want to talk about, which people don't think about, is students. We think about getting data from students and collecting data from them. We don't think about them as really being partners in the process. So in the space of equity conversations in the assessment communities broadly, it's around how do we partner with students? So yes, I want to grab information from them, but am I asking them, how things are, what's happening, what they think? Am I asking them for feedback to try to make things better? Am I asking, what their needs are? So when we think about like learning improvements, that's a great opportunity to say to students, well, what was working and what wasn't, to use that. We could be talking to students about our actual learning outcomes. Do these learning outcomes resonate with you? When we designed our institutional learning outcomes, we didn't talk to any students. We're like, this is what we think is important. And I'm not saying we're wrong, but the fact that we didn't consult with students about, did we miss anything? Or are these things that you think are important? We should be in conversation with students. So to try to do some of this, we look at some of our metrics are involved with, are we getting enough data into the ILO data dashboard so that we can make informed decisions about how we want to move forward? We have some student organization assessment and fall assessment day. I'll talk a little bit about those other things here in a minute. This fits into our value of community. And again, it fits into our HLC criteria. So I'm not going to really talk about the ILO assessment in detail, because that's, if you want to stay, I can talk about it there. But what we're really hoping people do, faculty, is identify assignments in their classes that meet these institutional learning outcomes, and then gather some data, because this is our one place to really look at disaggregated data. And, because the data comes out of Canvas, and then Jackie and others in institutional effectiveness link it to all our student information. So we can look at demographic variables, and we can think through how are things like ethnicity, age, gender. One thing we don't have in there yet, but I want to add, like socioeconomic status, like Pell Grant status. So we can see, how are we serving students? But that's like a participation issue. And this is part of our Focus 2024 plan. We said we want to get 600 people contributing to the ILO database. And if you want to do it, it's super easy. And that's the next session. One way of getting students involved is student organization assessment. I stole this idea from one of our other colleges here in the state of Arizona. And we've only piloted it, and then kind of COVID hit, and then we ran into some problems with student organizations having some issues. But the idea is that, like, we should really be talking to students about our learning outcomes. Some of you may do that, some of you may not. I mean, I don't think our students know what our institutional learning outcomes are, and they should be able to speak to them. And so in this project, what we wanted to do was have our student organizations identify some activity or event that they're doing that they want students to learn from. And then they have to think through, well, how am I going to gather that data? What is the learning outcome? Then they're going to collect the data, look at it, think about how they could improve in the future. So it not only gives them insight into the work that we're doing and skills that they might find useful as they go on, but it also kind of gives them some hands-on experience with things like data analysis and all of that. So this is something that I'm really excited about, and I'm just looking forward to us doing a little bit more about it, because often I hear faculty saying, I don't really want to tell our students about those ILOs. They're going to get confused. They're not going to understand what it means. I'm like, we should absolutely be telling students, what our outcomes are and why they matter and why we care about them. And then, of course, you're here for Fall Assessment Day, so thank you very much. But obviously, this is just a few things. But getting faculty and staff involved in our assessment events is part of kind of this equity issue, again, because the more conversations, the more voices at the table, the easier it is we can identify what we want to do and how we want to move forward. So kind of this has been how we think about this. And I don't have too much time left, but I do want to share, I went to some equity sessions at the Assessment Institute, and this is a really interesting activity. I know it says really small and you can't totally see it, but let me grab the link. So Karen Singer-Freeman and Christine Jones, I think that's right. They did this really nice session where they had us really think through all these aspects of our course, because they were focused. They said, okay, equity is a huge, like it's big and it's hard. It's like, what do I do? Like, how do I do it? And that's why I like the Peralta equity rubric, because it kind of says, okay, what do I do in my class to help this? But this was a self-reflection activity we did in this workshop where we thought about, okay, what's the knowledge? What are the skills and what are the attitudes students have? So knowledge might be specific content. They're coming into research methods having had statistics. Skills would be, writing, communication, critical thinking. Attitudes are, belonging, mindset, those types of things. So you had to identify, well, what are the proficiencies students have? Where might they be uneven? When I was doing this here, I'm like, they're all uneven, right? Like our students in the community college, like all of them are uneven, I thought. How could we help students self-diagnose? How could we help them remediate? So we have things like, and I'm totally blanking on the name, maybe somebody remembers, we'll put in the chat. Ed Ready. So Ed Ready could be a way that we could help students or self-remediate. Then it's like, okay, how could we use the TILT framework to support students? How could we do belonging in our classrooms to help students? How could we do sort of, make sure what we're doing is authentic? So there's all of these things. Oh, unable to open it. Okay, hold on. Let me come in here. I probably just didn't turn the sharing settings on. Oh, so if you go to it, did you click use template in the upper right-hand corner? I forgot to give the instructions. So there should be a blue use template button. What this does is this version of doing things in Google Docs allows you to see the document. And then if you want to make your own copy, you hit that blue button. It's better than the copy feature because the copy feature doesn't let you see it first. So that's why I like this version, but I forgot to actually give you the instructions. And I know like we're, the time's kind of running out, but I'll leave these slides up and I'll just maybe do a couple quick things. So the other thing that you might find interesting as a faculty member is there's research on what kinds of assignments have larger equity gaps than others. So this again comes from Karen, Christine, and some others. Christine Robinson, that's right. Oh yeah, Christine Jones, she's a faculty member here. That's why I got that in my head. So research shows that you're more likely to have equity gaps in assignments if you're doing formal writing. Interestingly, low stakes homework, because some students who come in and don't have a lot of resources, they don't have a lot of time. And if it's too low stakes, they don't engage in it, which I thought was really interesting. Testing, like my example with the dog, can be a problem, especially multiple choice testing. You're less likely to have equity gaps, or it happens less frequently in purposeful writing, for example, lab reports and reflective writing, purposeful homework, where again, that's this TILT framework, and you show students why it matters, free response testing, oral reports, authentic projects. So there are some things that faculty again can do in thinking through the assessments they give in their classes that support equity. And the last I stole these out of this presentation, and I won't go through all of them because you're going to see that they're very busy, but I'll give you the slide deck so that you can take a look at them if you want. This comes from Melissa Coe at Berkeley, but she goes through and she's like, okay, here's all the ways in which we can increase equity in the assignments to do this work just within our own classrooms. Some of these things we already talked a little bit about, and I'm just going to kind of click through these slides quickly because they'll be available. Things like language and tone. Are we providing support for students? And likely we're doing a lot of these things, but again, this is some of what we can be thinking about. And then the last is OER material. So Christine Jones, yay, our head of OER, she would love this one. because it makes our resources more accessible, other accessibility information, doing a lot of feedback. So there's a lot of things that we can think about outside of like the big global goals that we can do immediately in our classrooms to help support students. Now, the last thing I'll leave you with is if you really want to know a lot about this, this is a new book out by Janina Baker and others. And it's really thinking about how do we do this work. There's a great podcast, so this link that I'll put in, if you want to listen to the podcast with Janina, I really, really enjoyed it. And I actually want to pick up the book and read the whole book, which is like an edited book where lots of different people have presented around this idea. And it just is a way for us to really think about the intersection of some of these DEI and equity initiatives with the work that we are doing in assessment. And I'm 2 minutes over. Thank you for hanging in there. What kinds of questions can I answer in the last few minutes? Or was this, or you're like, this was, I knew all this stuff already.
This was great. I loved those final slides. You may have seen me taking little
Yeah,
screenshots. I know I could find it elsewhere, but
yeah,
you know.
here, let me do this right now. I know, because I was putting this together, I admit, last night. I'm like, and I'm like, there's so much good information. I'm like, I have 25 minutes, and like, where do I want to focus? Because what's the level of the people coming in? Because the workshop that I did, Assessment Institute, was 3 hours, and it was so great. I'm like, maybe we need to do the workshop. So I'll put the link to the slide deck right into the chat, so that you can get to it. Yeah, because those things, I mean, just being mindful of all, like, I think we have so much power in what we do at lots of different levels. Yeah.
I think it's good to keep like some of these things that I've heard before, but it's like to integrate it into the classroom, you've got to keep hearing it and hearing it. Because, you know, every semester I try something new or I embrace something else. So maybe, you know, last year it was OER and this year I'm trying TILT. So I love, even if I've heard of it, it's just great to have it put back in front of us again and again to just keep bringing in more stuff. So thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I did both Peralta Equity rubric trainings before you could get, you know, salary advancement for them, which was fine. Like, I don't mind. Like, they were really, really good. But what I said to Beth and to Megan is, like, it's not like my course is now totally Peraltaized. There's things that I can do. So I said, I probably won't take the first one again because I know the basics of it. But the second one where I apply to my course, I'm like, I'm just going to do that again. Then I can get, you know, the FPG for it, but I can also then, you know, work on a whole new set of things in my course. So one of the things, there's so many resources here available if people have the time to do it. And I love now that, you know, there's some salary advancement, which might give folks a little bit of an incentive to do some of this work. Yeah,
thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for coming by. I appreciate it. I know, whirlwind information. Other questions, comments? Some of these are like new things, and I've got to figure out like how best to frame it. But you should be hearing more about the intersection of strategic planning and equity and assessment at Convocation, because we've been having some interesting conversations recently around how do we like do this work in a more integrated fashion so we're not struggling through every, you know, too many different projects pulling us in too many different directions.
I came in late. What book is Kristen thanking you for?
Oh,
I see the podcast link, but what book?
Yeah, so it's called Reframing Assessment to Center Equity. I think you were talking about it, Pam, when I'm trying to remember, we were in some talk somewhere. I can't remember exactly, but I wanted
probably one of the ones that was like $1 million, but I really wanted to look at. Is that one of the ones you're talking about?
Well, yeah, it is $45, but
oh, well, that's not bad. No, there's one that I want.
If you buy it in hardback, it's $150, but I actually have a access code to get a discount from Assessment Institute, and I thought I was going to go to Lori and ask if we could buy some copies of all these assessment books I need to read, but I really want to read this one.
Yeah.
Because it does sound really, really good. All right, I'm gonna turn the recording off because